Bead Company, and today I'm going to do a bracelet design for you that kind of Anna and I worked on together and came up with the design. We also put it out there on our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making for a name, and thank you, Shannon, for suggesting the Moonstruck Bracelet. So for the Moonstruck Bracelet, if you need any of the materials, below the video is a date that the video was published that has general information from us about the video and details. If you hit the Show More button, that'll give you links to all of the different products online as well. So if you need any of the products to do them, go ahead and check out the links there. Also, there's the little eye in the top right-hand corner if you scroll over with your mouse, and that's information from us, the video creators, as well. So to start out, the Moonstruck Bracelet is obviously centered by a domed bead, and we're going to be using the 2-hold cab. So the 2-hold cabs come in two different sizes. They come in the 7mm as well as the 6mm. So the 6mm was kind of the original, the 7mm is a checkmate, and we're going to be using those for this design. If you do have the other 2-hold cab size, you can use that as well, and it actually will not affect the bracelet whatsoever. I'll be using the turquoise suede gold when we're going in here and creating. In addition to the 2-hold cabs, we're using another kind of funky bead, which is the crisscross cube. You can see it there in that brown color, and then I'm also using the crystal silver rainbow versus the brown rainbow to create the design. The crisscross cube is unusual because it has 2 holes that cross. There's space in between because of the way the manufacturing has to go, so one sits kind of off and recessed from another. As we work with it, and if you get a chance to get them, you'll notice and see the difference in that. I forgot to mention for the 2-hold cab, you're going to be using approximately 13 to 15 of that 2-hold cab. For the crisscross cube, you're going to double and add 2, however many of, or I'm sorry, just double the amount of 2-hold cabs you use is the amount of crisscross you're going to need. So anywhere from 26 to 30 for you. In addition to that, we're using 11O seed beads. I've used the Miyuki brand 11O seed beads, and it has the galvanized champagne here. And I worked with 2 different colors to kind of throw off the color and so things pop out a little bit more at you. I am using the emerald lined, the SF emerald lined, and then also the 11O other color is that Duracoat Galvanized Pewter to kind of darken it up a little bit since the green and that turquoise is so bright. To clasp the bracelet, you'll want to have a closure. I'm using a cup button, and this is the Jade Picasso cup button. In addition to that, you'll need 2 size 12 needles. The size 12 needles that you'll be using 2 of them, again, 1 on either side of thread. The thread that we're using is 0.006 wildfire beading thread. The needles that I prefer are just the pony size 12 needles. They're inexpensive needles, and again, 2 of those. You want about 5 feet of thread with a needle on either end. To get started also, it's great to have a thread burner handy. This is the Thread Zap Ultra. There's also the Thread Zap or the Beadsmith cord or the Bead Along cord cutter. All of them do the same thing, but it's nice to have that handy. Additionally, it's nice to have a needle nose pliers handy, so when you are going in to work off and to cut off the threads, that you can flatten them out, which is going to make it much easier for you to thread your needle. To get started, we have the 2-hold cabs that I want you to get out, as well as your base color if you're using 2 colors. In my case, it's that pewter color. In Anna's case, she used all 1 color. So go ahead and get those out, as well as your clasp, and we will get ready to get started with the needle on either end, 1 needle on either end of a piece of 5-foot thread. Again, just before we get started, thanks for a little shout out for Shannon for naming this Moonstruck Bracelet from our Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. So again, you want to have a needle 1/12 on either side of your 5-foot piece of beading thread. We're going to start with our clasp since it is a 2 needle project. We will be able to come back and reinforce the clasp as we go up and down the project, kind of coming back and adding in more of our crisscross, or adding our crisscross cubes and more of our seed beads. To start out, I just have that 1 pewter color of seed bead out, as well as our 2-hold cabs. We're going to begin, like I said again, with the actual cup button. To start, I want you to pick up 3 of your 11s with your needle and take one of your needle and go through one hole of the cup button and one needle through the other hole of the cup button with the dome facing down. That's going to put those couple beads right there in the actual cup button just to bring a little bit more of that dark pewtery color into the clasp area. Coming out the clasp area then, I want you to put on 3 11s on each needle. And then we're going to add a 4th bead, which I've already picked up with my right needle. Send the 3 beads down. That 4th bead we're going to crisscross through. One needle goes from the right to the left, and the other needle from left to right. When we pull the threads and push the beads down next to the clasp, you want to make sure that you still have an equal amount of thread on both the right and the left side. This crisscross pattern of 3 beads and then crisscrossing is going to be continued throughout the entire base of the project. To begin, we are going to add, just like we did, 3 seed beads on your right needle and 3 seed beads on the left needle. Then we're going to pick up our first cab. So the cabs again are domed. So they have a flat side and a dome side. For the first one that you put on, it's not going to matter. From here on out, we want to make sure that the dome side is facing up. We're going to take our first needle on the right hand side and crisscross through the first hole of the dome bead going from right to left. The needle on the left goes from left to right. We're going to crisscross and again make sure that you're pulling equal amounts of thread through both sides. You don't want to get to the end and realize that you have a lot of thread, more thread on one side than the other side. Coming out then the 2-holed cab, you're going to add 3 11s and progress from the bottom hole to the top hole of that cab, which is going to expose those 3 seed beads on the side. Everything that you do with the right needle, you're also going to do with the left needle. So 3 seed beads go on, and then the needle goes from the left to the right. And we pull. You want to make sure to pull because you don't want to see any extra thread. Even though it's the green thread, we still don't want to see any. From here then, we're going to continue on with that pattern again of 3 on the right, 3 on the left. Let those drop down next to the project. And then pick up another seed bead and crisscross through the seed bead. One needle going from right to left, one going from left to right, and give it a little tight pull. So that's going to frame out the entire cab. That frame eventually will sit up a little bit raised next to the cab, but as you progress, it's just going to sit right along the cab. From here, we continue on. As we add that second 2-hole cab, that's when we want to make sure that it's facing the correct direction. So again, we're coming out of that crisscross period. 3 seed beads on the right, 3 seed beads on the left. Then we're going to add our cab. When I add my cab, I want to make sure that I'm going through the correct hole, that it's going to face upward. The needle on the right going through the first hole from right to left, needle on the left, left to right. Let that then fall down next to your project. From here, add your side beads, which are going to be your 3 seed beads, and change the needle direction going back to the other side and connecting to that second hole of the cab. These are the fun things that you can do with 2 holes that you can't do with 1. After you have the 3 beads on both the left and the right needle, we progress then with our groupings of 3 again. Whenever you come out of the cab, make sure that you're not also sewing through any of the seed beads that you just added. You're always just sewing right through the cab. My 3 seed beads go on, and then I pick up a 4th bead that I'm going to crisscross through. After this then, I continue on building that whole entire first row. The bracelet will shrink up a tiny bit because it does have a curvature to it as the actual cabs sit up. So it's going to have a little bit of a curve to it, and you're gonna notice that as you wear it. So it will shrink a tiny bit in size. Again, you're gonna use about 13 to 15 cabs. Because you already have your clasp on, you'll be able to see exactly what or how many actual cabs you need to add. Again, it shrinks a tiny bit, but overall it's not going to shrink up that much. So you want to make it pretty much to fit and continue adding the cabs with the crisscrossing and the 3 on the sides. So I have my 13 beads on here and I'm ready to make my loop. I'm at the very end. And what I'm going to do is repeat what we did at the cup button place. So with one of our needles, and I'll pick my right one up, I'm going to add 3 beads and then my 4th bead to crisscross through. Pick up the other needle, add my 3 beads, crisscross through that 4th bead so that your threads are coming out with different sides, and then we're going to make our loop for our cup button to fit into. If you are doing a clasp, a elegance clasp, or a clasp garden, or a lobster clasp, or a toggle clasp, you would want to do that here as well. I always suggest that if you are using a metal clasp, to use a wire guard if you can. If not, I like to go through the clasp 3 times with my thread. Also, if you are using a regular thread, regular clasp, you may want to keep an eye for what color thread you use that's going to blend the nicest. Even if your beads are green or blue toned, you may want to use the white thread so that way you don't see it against your silver clasp. Just a suggestion. With that right needle, I added a bunch of my 11/0 seed beads, and once I have those 28 or so seed beads on, I'm going to take the thread and needle back through the 11/0 that the thread is coming out of. Give a nice tight pull. From here, we're going to come down the project. We come down the project and then back the project, so we'll get a chance to reinforce our loop. If you want to, you can reinforce that loop now. From here, I'm going to get ready to add the crisscross cubes. I'm still using that same pewter color seed bead. I don't start adding the actual color line seed bead until we come back down the project one more time. So you want out your crisscross cubes and your 11/0 seed beads. So to come down the project, we need to get in position. To get in position, I need to be ready to start at the actual seed bead that's on the very side of the cab, which is going to be the center bead of that group of 3. So my needle that's currently on my right hand side here, I'm going to take down the project all the way till I'm coming out that middle bead. On the left, same thing, coming down those 3 beads on the side and then up the 2 beads next to the cab. Give a nice tight pull so that way you don't see any extra thread exposed towards the end of the project. From here, we're going to get ready to add our 2-hole crisscross bead. So the crisscross bead, again, it has 1 hole going from left to right and 1 hole going from top to bottom. It's not going to matter for this row here that we're adding in which direction you pick up the 2-hole cab because it'll spin. This is going to be very, very simple. You're going to, with your right needle, I'm going to put the left needle down for a little bit, pick up 2 11/0 seed beads, my crisscross cube, 2 11/0 seed beads, and connect to the third, or that group of 3, the middle bead. I'll do a couple on the right hand side here, 2 seed beads, cube, 2 seed beads through that bead. Generally speaking, that 3rd bead will kind of stick out to the side, which will make it easy for you to catch on. You can see that curvature starting to happen a little bit. That's why I said the project is going to shrink up a little bit, because we're going to force those seed beads just a little bit closer to the cab. So I have my 2 seed beads on, my crisscross cube, 2 seed beads, down to the next one next to the side. Once you have that on, go ahead on your left hand needle, do a couple passes with the left, 2 seed beads, cube, 2 seed beads, and then pick up the seed bead along the side of the project. Generally speaking, I'll do about an inch or so with my right needle and then switch back to an inch or so with the left, back and forth. That way I may make sure that the tension will stay the same as we move along the project. So go ahead and work the whole way down the project, adding in your crisscross cubes through that first hole with 2 seed beads on either side. So I've gone ahead down and added in those crisscross cubes. You can see there's a lot of extra thread showing. And what I'm going to do at the end here as I reinforce is pull that thread tight on both sides. Again, that's going to kind of force those 2-holed cabs to sit up, which is what I want to happen. With the needle on the right hand side, to finish off this step, I'm going to go through the 3rd bead in that grouping of 3 along the cab, as well as the 3 after it, and crisscross through that center bead there. On the other side, same thing. Go up the beads along the side, all the way till you're crisscrossing through that center bead right below the clasp. At this point here, I'll also reinforce the clasp, giving a nice tight pull to those 2-holed cabs. Go up through the beads with the needle that you have in your hand, through the cup button and the beads that sit on top of the cup button, down the other side, and out to that crisscross bead again. Once you get there, give that thread a nice tight yank to tighten up that side. On the other side, we're going to do the same thing. Go through, take it, and reinforce the clasp. This will be the 3rd strand going through the end here, which is a nice way, again, to reinforce. If you have a regular clasp that you're using, again, here's the time to reinforce that as well. After I come down through the beads, I'm also going to crisscross through that 11. At this point now, I'm actually done with my pewter beads, and we're on to our green beads. So we're done all of our specialty beads, and we're back on to our next color of our 11-O's. This other color here is going to create that crisscrossing effect, which then if you want to, you can go back down the line here and kind of fill in at the top, or keep it empty, or do that fill-in piece there. So again, I'm going to kind of push those cabs up towards the top because I want those to raise or to rise up, and the crisscross cubes are going to come a little bit more towards the back. So we're going to get ready to add in our next color of our seed bead, forcing those cabs to sit up and reinforcing and going through that 2nd hole of the crisscross cube. So as we begin adding in our 11-O's and our color lined, our magic number here along the side is going to be 4. There's going to be 4 seed beads in the middle, as well as 4 on either side of the 2-holed cab, or the crisscross cube as they're coming out. To get in position, we want to get to this cross bead here that sits between the 2-holed cabs. I'm going to pick up my needle here on the right. And I want you to sew the whole way back through the side here. Go through then that Xing effect all the way up to get into position, which is going to be coming out then that middle bead. So I have one needle there ready to go. The other needle will retrace the steps right up through the Xing effect, through the 3 beads along the side, and then right up along the side here to that middle 11-O. Once I'm out the middle 11-O, I am in place to start connecting the crisscross cubes. So the crisscross cubes are kind of turning around as we're working on them right now. When you look at the crisscross cubes, you're going to notice that, and I'll brighten it up for you a little bit, those crisscross cubes, they have the 2 holes. They're kind of rotating in my hand. As you add, you're going to be making sure that that crisscross kind of sits towards the top of the project. With the needle coming out the right, I want you to add 2 11-0s and go through the crisscross cube. Coming out the cube, you're going to add 4 11s and then catch on to that center bead along the side. Again, that bead that was the group of 3, that center bead. And you're going to go a nice tight pull. Coming out that center bead then, we're going to add 4 more 11s and catch the crisscross cube going the opposite way, coming in. From here, add 2 more 11s and go through that center bead that sits between the 2 hold cabs. Give a nice tight pull. Needle that's on the opposite side and that we haven't started with, 2 seed beads go on. Make sure that hole is at the top of the crisscross cube. And go through it. Add 4 seed beads. Go through the side bead there. Come on out. 4 more beads go on. You're going into the crisscross cube from the outside and in towards the middle. When you get to the middle, just like we did on the other side, 2 11s get added. You're crisscrossing through that central bead. That's going to finish framing out that cab right there. So the second cab in line is what we just framed out. The thread and needle will be coming out then that middle 11-0 seed bead that sits between the 2 hold cabs. To get now to the next place to start, the needle that is coming out towards the right is going to go through those 2 seed beads. So we're crisscrossing through those 2 seed beads and out through the 2 hold cab. Or I'm sorry, out through the crisscross cube. From there we continue the pattern. 4 seed beads go on. Grab the next 11-0 that sits on the side of the cab. Sorry about that little break there. You're doing the 4 beads going through the 11-0. 4 more beads and grabbing the outside edge of the next crisscross. Coming in then, 2 more 11s get added and you go through the center bead. So it's just a repeat of that design. Again, on the needle that was sitting, going through the 2 11s, out the crisscross. When you do that, you do want to give a nice tight pull because you want those crisscrosses to kind of pull in towards the cab. That will make that cab, as you wear it, pop out a little bit more. Again, 4 seed beads go on through the next 11. 4 seed beads go on, that's the magic number, and through that next crisscross cube, sitting upward through the outer side. When you get to the middle, 2 11s get added, crisscross through the center bead. While that needle is in my hand, I'm also going to go up through the 2 11s and the crisscross. The needle on the other side, go through the 2 11s, picking it back up through that crisscross cube, and make sure you're not going through any of those 11-0 seed beads. Give a nice tight pull here to pull that in around the cab. And you can see that kind of curvature starting to happen. You're going to go in and continue adding those 11-0s the whole way along this bangle bracelet. So I've reached the end of the cuff bracelet here, and I'm getting ready to finish off the end. I'm coming out the last crisscross bead between the 2 hold cabs, and the needle that's on the right is going to stay to the right and follow along that kind of V line, just like we did when we started the project. From here, I'm going to go through the whole side of the cab, through the seed beads, that crisscross, as well as then reinforce this loop. So this is my opportunity to reinforce the loop and go through all of those seed beads. Just like the other side, if you have a regular clasp, you're going to be doing this as well. Reinforcing. Once this side is done with that reinforcement, I'm going to go back through that last crisscross bead and let my needle hang out there. Needle on the right, or on the left hand side rather, is going to do the same thing. Kind of pop that cab and the seed beads up, which you're going to do along the project as you kind of put it on, because it is going to have that curvature to it. So if the seed beads sit recessed a little bit, just push the crisscross cubes back and pop those 2-hole cabs up. Going along the side then, I'll use this thread to do one more reinforcement around the entire cut button loop. Once you have it through and everything kind of reinforced one more time, we're going to look for a place to knot off the thread, which, because you're using 2 threads, or rather 2 needles, is really easy because we're simply going to tie them together. So reinforcing, coming down the side here. Go the whole way down. And right there. You can, if you want to, tie the knot right here at the end, because of the thread color, you're really not going to see much of a knot at all. What I'm going to do though is go through that center bead so that my thread and needles are coming out on opposite ends. Go through the starting section of that V with whatever thread is the shorter of the 2. So I'm going back through the first 3 beads that started, and then I went into my cab. So I'm just going to bring the thread and needle out after those 3 beads. Thread and needle on the opposite side. I'm going to go down those 3 beads as well. And then bring that thread and needle straight through the cab. So I'm going through that first hole of the cab over to the opposite side. Once I come over on the opposite side, I'm going to take my needles off my project and tie the thread ends together. When I tie them, I want to do a square knot, right over left and left over right. I also generally will flip my project over and try to pull the knot to the back of the project so you don't see it as much. I'll then go in with the thread burner and burn off my thread ends. And it's sitting a little funky because it wants to sit curved, and I'm forcing it not to. Once I have that knot tied off, you're going to take your thread zap or your ultra, pull it out, heat it up, and burn those thread ends down. Once you have your thread ends done, you're going to pop out all your cabs, pushing them all out towards the exterior. Like I said, it'll sit kind of in that dome shape then, and then your bracelet will be completed. So again, once the thread ends are burned down, you are going to be completed with your project. So you can see the fun kind of creation that it creates. And again, if you need any of the materials, you can go back to the beginning of the video, to the date, published date below the video, hit that show more button, and you'll get the links for all of these different beads for the Moonstruck bracelet. When you also see those links, that'll connect you to PotomacBeads.com. You can also stay connected with us by subscribing to this YouTube channel. You'll get regular updates on new products like the crisscross cubes and these 2-hole cabs, and get a chance to kind of see things first, see new patterns that we come up with and new designs as well. Also, you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram, as well as Pinterest. And on Facebook also, you can become a member of our beading group, which is for beading and jewelry making. There you get a wonderful group of people that love to be helpful and ask suggestions, and actually a shout out and thanks again to Shannon for naming this bracelet. That's after you have, 700 designs. It's kind of hard to come up with a name, so thank you for that. But take a look at the group, ask to become a member, and really grab a seat, get the inspiration, and check it all out. As always, thank you so much for watching, and have fun creating the Moonstruck Bracelet.